You know, we kind of tell ourselves a comforting lie every single morning. I do it anyway. We wake up and believe that if we are kind, if we are honest, and if we just work hard enough, the world will actually reward us with safety and success. It's a nice thought. We operate under the assumption that the universe has some sort of moral compass, that goodness acts like a shield, and that integrity is its own armor. But then you look around you. I mean, really look. Look at the history books. Look at the corporate boardrooms. Look at the shattered lives of those who played by the rules while others broke them with impunity. It's messy. The disturbing truth, the one that keeps the powerful awake at night and the innocent in the dark, is that goodness without power is not virtue. Honestly, it's just vulnerability. It's an invitation to be devoured. There exists this hidden manual for survival, a playbook written in blood and ink that has been demonized for 500 years. It was banned by the church, hated by kings, and whispered about in shadows. They called it evil because it stripped away the illusions we cling to. But what if the man you were taught to hate, the name synonymous with treachery and deceit, was actually trying to save you? What if his advice was not a call to become a monster, but the only way to remain a good person in a world that eats the weak? I don't know. It's something to think about. We are about to step into a reality where intentions do not matter, where morality is a luxury of the safe, and where the only thing that counts is the outcome. This is not a story about how to be bad. This is the art of power for those who refuse to lose their souls while fighting for what is right. To understand this dangerous truth, we must first walk through the fire that forged it. Imagine a man broken by the very system he served. Niccolo Machiavelli was not born a cynic. He was made one. He was a diplomat, a patriot, a man who loved his city of Florence more than his own life. He spent years negotiating peace, building alliances, and serving a republic that believed in liberty. And then, in the blink of an eye, the winds of fortune shifted. The Medici family returned to power, and the republic collapsed. Machiavelli was fired, accused of conspiracy, thrown into a dungeon, and tortured. They suspended him from a rack, dislocating his shoulders, screaming questions he could not answer. It sounds pretty brutal when you say it out loud. When they finally released him, broken and bruised, they exiled him to the countryside, forbidding him from entering the city he loved. He was alone, stripped of his status, his voice, and his future. Most men would have retreated into bitterness or prayer. But Machiavelli did something far more radical. In the silence of his exile, by the flickering light of a candle, actually, probably just a cheap lamp that buzzed a bit, he began to write. He did not write to flatter the tyrants who ruined him. He did not write to beg for mercy. He wrote to document the mechanics of power as he had seen them, raw and unfiltered. He watched the farmers during the day, arguing over pennies and land, and at night he dressed in his old diplomatic robes and entered a court of the mind, speaking with the great leaders of history. He realized that the world did not operate on how things should be, but on how they are. He was crafting a shield, not a sword. He was trying to arm the vulnerable with the cold, hard truths that the powerful already knew. What happened next would define his philosophy forever, turning a disgraced civil servant into the most misunderstood thinker in human history. I guess that's one way to put it. At the heart of his revelation lies a concept that makes modern sensibilities shudder. The idea that it is better to be feared than loved. When you hear this, your instinct is to recoil. You think of tyrants, of bullies, of cruel dictators ruling through terror. But you are missing the psychological depth of his argument. Machiavelli was not advocating for hatred. He was analyzing the reliability of human emotion. He observed that love is a bond held by men who are, by nature, selfish and fickle. In times of prosperity, when the sun is shining and the tables are full, people will promise you everything. They will say they would die for you. They will offer you their blood. But the moment danger approaches, the moment the storm hits and sacrifice is required, that bond of love evaporates. Men will turn on you to save themselves. Love is voluntary, and therefore it can be withdrawn at any moment. Fear, however, is different. Fear is preserved by a dread of punishment that never fails. It is a consistent force. When people fear the consequences of crossing you, they remain loyal not because they like you, but because they respect the boundary you have enforced. This is not about cruelty for cruelty's sake. It is about stability. A leader who relies solely on being loved is at the mercy of the crowd's whims. A leader who commands respect through the credible threat of consequence creates an environment where order can exist. He introduced the metaphor of the fox and the lion. The lion represents raw strength, the ability to crush wolves and defend the flock. But the lion is clumsy. It cannot see traps. The fox represents cunning, the intelligence to spot the snare before stepping into it. To survive, you must be both. You must have the strength to enforce your will and the wisdom to navigate the deceptions of others. The world doesn't reward what you intend. It rewards what you enforce. If you are a fox without claws, you will be eaten. If you are a lion without eyes, you will be trapped. True power is the synthesis of these two forces, a strategic balance that allows you to protect what matters. It's sort of like having a lock on your door, but also knowing how to pick one. But this is where things become dangerous, for it requires us to look into a mirror we usually avoid. Machiavelli famously stated that men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and covetous. Read that again. It sounds harsh, doesn't it? It sounds like the ranting of a bitter soul. Yet, what he discovered about human nature was far more disturbing than simple pessimism. It was an observation of evolutionary survival. Human beings are wired for self-preservation. When resources are scarce, when status is threatened, when fear takes hold, the veneer of civilization cracks and the primal instinct to survive takes over. We project our own goodness onto others, assuming that because we would not betray a friend, no one else would either. This is a fatal error known as naive realism. We assume everyone plays by our rules, and in doing so, we make ourselves prey. Consider the leader who trusts implicitly, who shares every secret, who believes that transparency will be met with reciprocity. When the crisis comes, that leader finds their secrets used as weapons, their trust exploited as a weakness. Machiavelli argued that you must never assume goodwill where self-interest is at stake. This does not mean you must become paranoid or treat everyone as an enemy. It means you must verify. It means you must understand that people act according to their nature, not your hopes. The cost of ignoring this shadow in others is total destruction. History is littered with the ruins of good men who refuse to see the wolves standing right in front of them, smiling with bared teeth. To be truly ethical, you must first be realistic. You must acknowledge the capacity for evil in others so that you can build defenses against it. Ignoring the darkness does not make it go away. It only ensures that you will be the first one consumed by it. My coffee went cold while I was typing that last bit anyway. Let us take this abstract theory and stain it with the blood of history. For ideas are cheap, but consequences are real. Picture the city of Sinigaglia in the winter of 1502. Cesare Borgia, the son of a pope and the embodiment of Machiavellian strategy, had a problem. His mercenaries, the very men paid to protect him, were plotting to overthrow him. They were greedy, undisciplined, and dangerous. A moralist might have tried to reason with them, to appeal to their honor. Borgia knew better. He invited the ringleaders to a meeting under the guise of reconciliation. He welcomed them with open arms, feasting and laughter masking the trap. Once they were inside, unarmed and off guard, the doors slammed shut. Borgia's soldiers descended upon them. The conspirators were strangled, their bodies left as a message to anyone else who dared to challenge authority. It was brutal. It was cold. It was calculated cruelty. Yet look at the result. That single act of violence ended a rebellion before it could spark a civil war. It saved the region from months of bloodshed, famine, and chaos. Borgia's evil action created a pocket of peace. Contrast this with the fate of Savonarola, a friar in Florence who preached pure moral fire. He condemned the corruption of the church and the decadence of the city. He was a man of absolute integrity, beloved by the masses for his righteousness. But he lacked political teeth. He had no army, no strategy, no willingness to get his hands dirty. When the powers that be turned against him, his moral purity offered no protection. He was arrested, tortured, and burned at the stake in the very square where he once preached. His death changed nothing. The corruption continued unabated. Here lies the paradox. Borgia's dirty hands secured order, while Savonarola's clean hands led only to ash. Sometimes, to protect the many, one must make a decision that stains the soul of the leader. The question is not whether you want to get your hands dirty. The question is whether you're willing to let the world burn to keep them clean. It's a heavy thing to consider. You might think these games belong to the past, to a time of daggers and poisons. But you would be wrong. The costumes have changed, but the play remains exactly the same. Walk into any modern corporation, and you will see the fox and the lion in suits. Watch how promotions are given, not to the hardest workers, but to those who understand the levers of power. Observe how narratives are spun in the media, how scandals are buried, and how reputations are dismantled with surgical precision. In the world of regulatory compliance, in the high-stakes arena of pharmaceutical distribution, the dynamics are identical. When you uncover wrongdoing, when you stand up for integrity, you are not greeted with applause. You are isolated. You are gaslit. Documents disappear, memories fade, and suddenly the whistleblower becomes the villain. This is the modern mask of Machiavellianism. It hides behind terms like strategic communication, crisis management, and negotiation leverage. The powerful know that truth is malleable, that perception is reality, and that documentation is the only armor that holds. If you are a person of principle, fighting for justice, protecting the vulnerable, you are playing a game where the other side has no rules. They will use your honesty against you. They will exploit your empathy. You think these games are over? They have just changed costumes. The stakes today are not just kingdoms, but livelihoods, legacies, and the safety of entire communities. To fight for what is right in this environment, you cannot be naive. You must understand the tactics of your opponents better than they understand them yourself. You must be prepared to document every interaction, to secure your narrative sovereignty, and to stand firm even when the pressure to compromise is overwhelming. The battlefield has shifted from the castle to the courtroom, from the dungeon to the boardroom. But the nature of the conflict remains unchanged. I hear a dog barking outside, just for a second, then it stopped. So, how does a good person survive in such a world without becoming the very thing they fight against? This is the ultimate challenge, the tightrope walk between power and integrity. The answer lies in what we might call principled detachment. You do not adopt Machiavellian tactics to exploit others. You adopt them to create a shield around your values. You learn to be the reluctant warrior, the one who knows how to fight so fiercely that they rarely have to. True ethics require the capacity for harm restrained by choice. A harmless person is not good. They are just harmless. They are incapable of causing damage, so their goodness is merely a lack of option. But the person who could destroy their enemy, who could manipulate the situation for personal gain, and yet chooses not to, that is true virtue. That is power under control. Use your knowledge of human nature to anticipate betrayal before it happens. Use your understanding of fear and respect to set boundaries that cannot be crossed. Use your strategic mind to protect the vulnerable, ensuring that your actions create just outcomes rather than chaotic ones. This is about emotional sovereignty. It is about refusing to be manipulated by guilt or false narratives. It is about documenting the truth not out of paranoia, but out of a commitment to accountability. When you face institutional corruption, when you are pressured to compromise your principles, remember that your power comes from your clarity. You are not playing their game to win their prize. You are playing to ensure that the game itself remains fair. You are the guardian at the gate, armed with the wisdom of the fox and the strength of the lion, standing between the innocent and the wolves. It sounds dramatic, I know, but it's just practical. As we bring this journey to a close, let the weight of this truth settle upon you. The world is not fair. It never has been, and it never will be. Good intentions are not enough to stop a tidal wave. Moral purity is not a shield against a dagger, but this realization is not a cause for despair. It is a call to awakening. Power is not the enemy of goodness. Ignorance is. The greatest tragedy is not that there are evil people in the world, but that good people are often too afraid, too naive, or too unprepared to stop them. Machiavelli's legacy is not a handbook for tyrants. It is a warning to the righteous. It is a reminder that if you wish to uphold your values, you must be strong enough to defend them. You must be willing to look into the abyss of human nature and not blink. You must be willing to make the difficult choices, the ones that stain the soul, but save the spirit of the community. Ask yourself now, in the quiet of your own mind, where have your good intentions left you exposed? Where have you assumed love where you should have demanded respect? Where have you failed to prepare for the betrayal that was inevitable? The cost of standing up for truth is high, but the cost of silence is higher. Your legacy is not written in the prayers you whisper, but in the battles you fight and the protections you build. Go forth not as a victim of a cruel world, but as a master of its realities. Be the shield, be the sword, be the one who sees the darkness clearly and chooses, despite everything, to bring the light. Or, I don't know, just keep your eyes open. That's probably enough for now.